My name is Jordan Lacey, and I'm calling myself, now that I've finished my PhD, an environmental sound researcher, spatial sound artist and sound designer, which are not things I would have called myself at the start of my PhD. Then I would have called myself a musician and a secondary school teacher. So it's been a real transformative journey for me. I just want to go through discussing the projects that I did. I did a PhD by project, and I completed 7 projects in total over 4 years. And they have a real logic to them in terms of how they unfolded, but that's not something I realised till right at the end of the process. At this point at the beginning, probably where you are now, I was in a state of chaos and flux and not quite knowing what I was doing. And this first project called Silencing Urban Exhalations, this is an exhaust stack in Bowen Lane. A lot of you probably know it. And it just spews out a whole bunch of noise, which is actually some exhaust fumes from a car park underneath. And my first act, if you like, in the PhD was to shut that down. So I was looking at how can we remove noise from urban environments. And it took me about 3 months to organise that to be shut down for 30 minutes. And I did it as part of a class I was teaching, the Soundscape Studies elective. And that's one of my students right there. And that's something you might consider doing while you're doing your PhD, is taking up some casual teaching work within the course, which if it becomes available, you can tie it into your research in an ethically approved way, of course. So very much a recursive process encouraged in the School of Architecture and Design, where one creates a project and then reflects on it. And I guess to some extent I took that quite literally. So when I realised how hard it was to remove sound from the urban environment, I then thought about, well, can we add sound to the urban environment? So those 4 air conditioners I installed, and inside each of them are speakers, and those speakers are playing sounds that were recorded in this site. So it was the beginning of experimentations on how we could transform sound environments by adding synthesised sounds that have been synthesised from the real sounds where the installation occurs. I did this I have to say I did this in league with Soul Sound Studios, and lots of help from this guy, Jeff Hannum, who happens to be in the audience, so I had to mention that. Don't fall over. So at this stage, and this is sort of bookending the process. So at this point of the PhD, it was very much practice-based. So I was right inside the making, and it was all about the making and what was unfolding as a consequence of that. So it's sort of bookended at the beginning, where I spent a lot of time in dirty laneways recording air conditioners. And by the end of the process, I had a computer system that was playing the sounds through those 4 speakers. So as the PhD went on, I was now in about the 3rd year of the PhD, and this is all sounding very condensed and neat and tidy, and of course it wasn't. It was pure chaos, flux, and lots of fun and stress. I'll get to that. But at this point, I was invited to create a work in what's known as the Trench. This is a big space underneath Federation Square in between platforms 12 and 13 of Flinders Street Station. And again, I repeated this idea of recording sounds in the environment, synthesising those sounds, and then playing them back in to create a transformative listening experience. So by this point, I'd repeated this idea maybe 3 times, and it became more and more refined with each idea, until I was at this point now. I say, right, I've got a sound design method, or a public spatial sound design method. Again, just bookending the process. So this is right at the beginning. Fluoro lit environment, very cold and uncomfortable down there. And you can see some microphones. I'm recording the space. And then right at the other end, I've got this nicely refined performance technology set up where I could actually complete the work across a series of performances. And this image here gives a sense of the change in lighting. So there was a sonic and a visual episode to it. So between here and here, we're probably talking 4 months, just intensive work inside the space, listening, recording, playing, transforming, and then getting to that endpoint. So they were kind of strongly connected projects that revealed a theme, which I'll get onto. But at the same time, there were all these other projects that were kind of spinning off from the main theme. And this is one of them that came to life, called Intimate Footsteps. Originally, you can see there's a projection of a laneway down there. I'd wanted to do what I was doing with the sounds of air conditioners or trains or whatever else I was playing with footsteps. So this is how we place underneath Manchester United building, and you can hear the sounds of footsteps moving through, and I wanted to make an installation that played with footstep sounds in a similar sort of transformative way. And it was just too hard, you know, because any public artists in here will know how difficult it is trying to get your ideas out into the public realm. You've got so much tape to cut through. So in this case, it was an installation that ended up being two virtual people walking together and kissing and cuddling and moaning in this space, and you could control it by pressing into this chair. You know, so as you can see, pretty different to all the other projects, but found a place in the process. So that's a rapid sort of gunfire description of what was really 3.5 years work, and I'm now in the post-PhD phase. In terms of this question, what do you do after your PhD? Similarly, had no idea. But what I'm doing is collaborating with other artists now, trying to create transformed sound environments. So this is a work called Humming Infrastructures that I'm completing with Fiona Hillary. Some of you might know Shanti Sumatojo and Elliot Palmer, who's another sound artist. So the idea is we're getting these containers together and using sound and light to create something augmented. And we're now in discussions with the Maritime Union of Australia to try and create a Australia Council funded larger scale project on this principle. And I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't have gone through the PhD. Right? So there is some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. That was nicely timed. So in terms of this, as Colleen referred to as the thing or the moment or the kernel, for me it's the sonic rupture. So now when people say to me, oh, what was your PhD about? I say, the sonic rupture. And when I started, rupture to me sounded like a really sort of unfortunate health circumstance, you know. And a lot of people still think, oh, couldn't you think of a better word? But it means something very different for me now, based on a lot of readings by Felix Guattari, and you know, this is which I tied into my thinking. I think reading is still important. There was a lot of people in my PhD who were saying, oh, you're reading too much, you're thinking about too much philosophy, and sometimes you've got to take those things on board, but just do it anyway, because in the end it's your research. And for me it was really important as a way to articulate these experiences I was having while making. So if someone asked me now, like through the PhD, what it was about, I didn't really have much to say, but now I just say that the sonic rupture uses site-specific materials to diversify environments and human experience, and you kind of do get there, and you know when you finish your PhD because you can actually condense it down to that sentence or those few words. Okay, so that's kind of, you know, a compressed PhD. In terms of what do I wish I knew then that I know now, so I was sort of thinking about this, and I'll just try to condense it down to four things. So the first thing is navigating supervisors. My supervisors were fantastic. Anyone who happens to know them, please relay that. They were very supportive, and they got me through the whole process, and they knew a lot more than what I did, and they knew how to get through, and I respected that and worked with them. However, they are incredibly busy people. They're academics, and they've got so much pressures on them all the time to be producing outcomes, and it's really hard to access them sometimes. We want them all the time. You know, we want them to say, Jordan, you're doing really well. You're great. Your work's amazing. This is all going to be fantastic. You want that affirmation because you're feeling insecure. But, you know, yeah, it's kind of, that's not going to happen. So I'm sorry to tell you. So think creatively, how can you get your supervisors interested in your research? And one way that I discovered is collaborative research outcomes, because your supervisors need outcomes, so if you can help them achieve an outcome, then it's good for you and good for them. So with my supervisor, Lawrence Harvey, we co-published quite a few papers together, 2 or 3 papers together, and that was really good for him because he was able to add that to his own outcomes. But it was also really good for me because the paper was about my research. So when I met with Lawrence, we could really unpack what I was trying to do and what I was trying to achieve. You know, I can't see why you couldn't do that with installations or exhibitions. So I don't know. It's an iffy one, but it's a solution that I found. mistakes are as important as the purposeful. So this is a diagram I could talk about for an hour, but I'm not. You're happy to know. But this arc is the main theme that I unpacked in the PhD, and pretty much all the projects I showed you are on there. But then there are these moments of what I think of as bifurcation, where the main research theme just shoots off in another direction. And I probably had 6 or 7 of those, but one of them survived, which was the intimate footsteps, and it led on to a whole bunch of other stuff, which I was able to use. I suppose the point with that is don't be afraid of making mistakes, or don't be afraid of going down the wrong path, because sometimes it can be really fruitful, but at the same time be aware that you may have to abandon it and move on. So dealing with stress, I developed psoriasis during my PhD, which has pretty much nearly disappeared at the moment I finished my PhD. It is really stressful. Couple of things. Everyone is experiencing what you're experiencing is doing a PhD, and finding a community is really important. I didn't find mine till about the 3rd year when I moved into the design hub and met a whole bunch of other PhD students, and we were having meetings like the 12 of us, just talking about our ideas and talking about how we were feeling, and it was really helpful. It's sort of normalising. And the other thing is exercise lubricates the mind, so particularly when I was writing my exegesis, before I put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, I would walk around the park briskly a couple of times. I find the thoughts would start flowing, and then I had something to write about when I got back to my computer. And I think, echoing what Colleen was saying, it's the thing with the PhD, and I realise this more now it's over, it's an opportunity for full creative immersion, to throw your whole being into the creative process. And for me, that was a really joyful process. It's difficult, it's hard, but it's special, because I don't know, unless I do another PhD, which I'm not going to do, I don't know if you really get that chance of full immersion in that process. And final point, you've all been asked that question, I'm sure, and there's lots of variations on that answer, but that's the answer I gave until I finished it, you know what I mean? Because you just end up in this rabbit warren, and the thing is, for me, the PhD is like something you carry and you hold, and you've got to protect it from all the naysayers and the negativity. Just hold on to it, and I'll tell you in 4 years I'm gestating, and then when it comes out, or then you can say what it was. Oh, it's a sonic rupture. I mean, come on, what's your problem, So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.